All right, welcome back here to On Record. I'm here with a man that I talk with quite often when I was in Charlottesville. Someone that I probably annoyed the crap out of with our constant phone calls and text messages. I call them the Don, Mr. Don Gathers. Don, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, sir. It's always good to see you and to talk with you, and no, you were never an annoyance, sir.
Gotcha. Well, you're probably one of the rare few people that thought that. I mean, just, I mean, as a reporter, we constantly call people like, "Hey, I need to talk to you right now." And sometimes that was the case with you and a few others in Charlottesville, but it's good to hear that I wasn't such a bother whenever I called. So, how are things going with you in general in Charlottesville? How are things going? Just how is 2021 treated you?
Doing well. Still trying to navigate the pandemic and everything associated with that. But it's sun comes up somewhere every morning, so you just deal with the day as it presents itself.
Gotcha. I hear you on that. How have you been doing taking care of yourself as well? I know you had I know it's been a couple of years, but I know you had a health scare, and then obviously with COVID and everything going around. How have you been doing yourself?
Doing well. Getting regular checkups, and just trying to stay on top of it and do what the doctors advise me to do. Taking things at a different pace these days.
COVID, in a sense, I know it's slowed a lot of us down when it came to our daily lives and everything. How much has it slowed you down a little bit? Maybe you get a chance to take a step back and appreciate things a little bit more.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It changes your whole mindset. This thing it's serious, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon. Was sad to hear just this morning. General Colin Powell had passed away from complications with COVID. We've had family members who have passed away from COVID. So I mean, it's. I know people have different thought patterns, different beliefs, different ideals, but for me, if I can, I just want to encourage everybody to get the vaccine. We know for certain that people are dying from COVID. We don't know with any level of absolute certainty that people are dying from the vaccine. So if you're not concerned about protecting yourself, at least protect the people that care about you and that you care about, and get the vaccine.
Definitely hear you on that. Definitely want to encourage others to get the COVID vaccine, especially as we get closer to the holiday season, so we can get a chance to see our friends and loved ones. So definitely, please get the vaccine if you can. The world would definitely be a much better place if you are able to get it. So going back to you. So, I mean, tell me a little bit. We've talked a lot numerous times in the past about, things going on in Charlottesville, your life in Charlottesville, but tell me a little bit about how you came up, like even growing up as a kid and before you ever got to Charlottesville.
Oh, wow. Well, grew up in Richmond, the Churchill specifically. The youngest of six young men my mother had. God rest her soul. When one of my brothers has passed away, so there's still five of us. Family is aging somewhat gracefully, and the majority of my family is still based in the Richmond area, scattered throughout New Jersey down to South Carolina, but the majority of the folks are still in the Richmond area. Got married some 8 years ago. My wife drugged me here to Charlottesville, kicking and screaming, and we've just been here ever since. Just had a son graduate from UVA, football player, and he's trying to navigate his life. My oldest son is down in Richmond, and the middle one is down in Atlanta. So we're a blended family of three. And including our dog, our corgi, Ross, who I really should have named Goodness and Mercy because he follows me everywhere. He's sitting here at my feet right now as we speak, actually.
Me a little shot of the dog. I just want to see him, if you can.
Yeah, he's kind of got his head turned. Let's see. How do I turn this camera? Okay, I
You'll be
see
able
it.
to just rotate it if you can, or if you just want to turn it the other. Oh, there he is.
Yeah,
Gross.
he's just kind of chilling.
Hey, there ain't nothing wrong with that. Hey, dogs have the easiest lives, in my opinion. They don't have to deal with but so much. So, and also they take a lot of burden off of us in a sense, emotionally and mentally. When you grew
Yeah, and
up
they
in,
already know we're crazy anyway. So they accept it and they just keep moving.
and yet we have to deal with their craziness as well too. So,
Yeah.
so going back to your growing up in Richmond and everything. What was when exactly did you grow up in Richmond, and what was like in Richmond? Because I know like nowadays, I mean, I'm here in the Richmond area, and it's like I hear stories about how it used to be. My mom grew up in this area. I'm like, I can't imagine Richmond any other way than what I've grown up with.
I think that was probably a smoothly navigated way to ask me how old I am. But
I wasn't trying to ask about the age. I wasn't trying to ask about the age, man. I was just trying to ask, like, hey, what was Richmond like then and now? Just like a comparison. We'll try to do that.
I grew up
At
in
least you're not a
Richmond.
woman. You come through this TV and probably slap the crap out of me.
Hey, look, early 60s. God has blessed me to see 62. Grew up in Richmond in the height of the crack epidemic. When Richmond became the murder capital of the country for at least 2 years, I think it may have been three, and it seemed like Richmond was the main drop-off point between Miami and New York for the drugs going either way. So there was a lot of turf battles, a lot of gang wars, and as I said, a lot of murders. It used to be that Richmond was a very much racially divided town as far as neighborhoods. As you said, now that's not so much the case. Just in the neighborhood where I grew up, over in Church Hill, the number of white citizens that now populate that area, it certainly isn't anything that we would have seen back when I was growing up. And I guess in many ways that's a good way, but it also has lost the feel, the family feel that we had growing up. It used to be if you did something, the neighbors beat you. Maybe even depending on how far you were from home, several neighbors got to beat you, and by the time you got home, your mom knew about it. So when folks say it takes a village, it really did take a whole village, and I think we've lost some of that along the way.
The racial divide you said that was in Richmond. We talked a little bit about that briefly. Like, I mean, it's still like that to some degree, especially when you go from, like, say, the downtown area, then you cross the river into South Side, especially, and there's a couple other pockets. But how did that racial divide kind of affect the city from your perspective at the time, and what exactly was it like as well?
Well, even in Lower South Side, in Manchester and in Blackwell area, it's not what it once was. There's the entire neighborhoods have been completely integrated. Segregation was very much the thing back in the 60s and the 70s, and probably even in the early 80s. We grew up right in the height of of school integration and forced busing. So a simple fact, all of my brothers went to Armstrong. I got sent to Kennedy, which I was okay with that. But that was part of the racially drawn lines, and the inclusivity to bring people in from all across the city. I graduated with one of Governor Holton's sons. I believe that his older sister may have graduated with my brother. So the forced busing, the integration, there are arguments both ways. Was that helpful? Was it hurtful? Again, I think that some of the historical values may have been lost through some of that. One of those things, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, the Armstrong Walker Football Classic.
Yep, I've heard of it.
That was, people literally came back for that classic every year. It was always Thanksgiving. People came back every year from all across the country for that at the old city stadium. And it was just a family type gathering where people just filled the stadium to capacity, rain or shine. And it was an event that the entire city came out for. And, through some of the things that have happened with city schools, that was lost. Consolidation, creation of complexes, the closing actually for a while of Maggie Walker. It is now reopened as the governor's school. That was lost. And I don't think it's something that you can get back, unfortunately.
And just to give people some context, where exactly was the high school you went to? Because I know Armstrong's in the East End, right by the projects. Where exactly was your high school, to give people context?
Well, Armstrong now, where it sits, is the old Kennedy building. The original Armstrong was over on 31st Street, on North 31st Street. I don't even know if that building is still there, but it was on North 31st Street, just on the, I guess that would be the east side of 9 Mile Road. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And on the other side of 9 Mile Road was where Creighton Court began. Kennedy sat over just outside of Fairfield Court. So you had this blending of all the different housing communities coming in, Fairfield Court, from Wickham Court, from Mosby Court, from Creighton Court, and then over in the lower south side, out of the Blackwell area. So it was, it obviously and naturally would cause some problems initially. Mm-hmm. But even back then, kids seem to figure out how to make it work, how to get along better than we as adults do. And I think athletics has a lot to do with that. The team competitions just bring people together. So, I mean, it's a time in my life that I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. It's the old adage, though. I wish I knew then what I know now.
To give people some added context also, where you see all those apartments being up just south of the river, that's Manchester. Mm-hmm. To give people some context. And the Blackwell area is right just when you get past them, like going down Kawarden, right down Route 1, you turn off Commerce, Morey's, all those areas, Decatur Street. That's what we're talking about now. So just want to give people that context on that. Growing up, when you went to school back in the day, how does it compare to when you sent your sons to school nowadays, especially, just when it comes to the education side, and then also just being in school for kids to be able to get along?
Well, one thing that jumps out to me, and I do not mean this as a slight to anyone. It may sound like it, but I don't mean this as a slight to anyone. When I was coming through, we had teachers. I think now you have, because of the state requirements, because of the SOL requirements, because of the curriculums, you now have educators. And people have had to morph into that role, and they don't actually get to, I think, teach as many of them may want to, because they have to prepare students on a daily basis for the SOLs. Because that's their livelihood, that's the livelihood of the school itself and of the school division, and they've got to make sure that the correct percentage of these students pass these things. So I think that we've lost some of the personal touch that you would get from teachers. Um, and that's not to say that the individuals who are in that profession now don't care as much, because I truly think that they do. I can't imagine anyone going into the education field unless they truly had a passion for it. But I just think that back then, it was different. It was different. Parents showed up for parent teachers conferences. There was an issue at school. They were there. The kid was participating in a sporting event, athletic event. They had any event at school, be it choir, band competition, whatever. Parents in the communities were there, and I think the circumstances we've reached a point where circumstances might be preventing some of that right now. And again, that's not a slight on anyone. It's the times that we live in.
When exactly did you move to Charlottesville?
8 years ago. Got married in 2013 and moved up here.
And you said your wife dragged you up there, right?
Yeah. I mean, at that point in my life, I had no desire whatsoever to relocate and to uproot what I had known my entire life, my entire existence. But that was the point that we found ourselves in, and it was much easier for me to do so than her. So that's how I landed here.
And before we get into like the Charlottesville life, growing up your adult life in Richmond, how did you see the city? How did you see the area change over time?
I guess the first thing was a shift in the Black representation on city council. There was a huge power struggle for a while. There also was the shift from council appointed mayor to directly elected mayor, which has had its challenges. And we've had some good people in those positions. I just don't know that the city was actually ready for that shift in power structure or in leadership. Governor Wilder has held that position. Reverend Dwight Jones has held that position, and of course, Mayor Stoney now is doing any and everything that he can to keep the city above board and afloat. And it presents some unique challenges, but I commend them. You probably knew before you left, Charlottesville was having some low-level discussions about making that same shift and making that change themselves here. And I don't know where that is right now. I know that the General Assembly would have to give its blessing upon it to happen. And who knows what will ever happen down in Richmond at the State House.
Right now, we're in the heart of election season with delegates. They're up for re-election, so it'll be interesting to see how November plays a factor. Not to mention the governor's race right now between McAuliffe and Glenn Youngkin. So November will definitely be a telltale sign of maybe where things go here in the state, in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
And just as I urge people to go out and get that vaccine, get out and vote as well. It is equally important in as much as what happens on the level of your community, what happens on the level of your state directly impacts your life on a daily basis. So it's important that you get out and participate in the electoral process.
Vote, 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 everybody. America, everywhere you are, vote, vote, vote. So you moved to Charlottesville, you got there 2013. It's been 8 years as of now. When you first got to Charlottesville, what were some of the first thoughts you had on the city?
It was different. This has much more of a country feel than Richmond or anything that I had ever experienced. This was just different. I mean, I lived briefly in Petersburg for a while too.
Shout out Petersburg.
Yes, yes.
Gotta shout out my hometown.
Yeah, but Richmond's always been home, and this was just different. This was much more rural. Yeah, I was out one day and literally saw chickens walking down the sidewalk, and I mean, it's odd, but it's very homey. Um, Neighborhood and communities, at least some of them, are very close, very tight knit. Um, it's old generational homes here, much like in Richmond and Churchill. But it's just different. It just has much more of a country feel to it.
Yeah, often when I first got to Charlottesville, it's like you got the main city, obviously, the little bubble that is Seaville, the special
Mm-hmm.
bubble, as some people might call it. And then after that, like you can go 2 miles east or west of the city, and you're like, where the hell am I at? What did
Feel
I get
like
myself into? Here in
you
Richmond,
feel
you
like
gotta
you've
go like
landed in Green Acres hell.
yeah, you gotta go like 30 miles to like get like in the Powhatan or something like that,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
like Hanover to feel that country feel. You can go 2 miles west city, like when you go down Ivy Road or something, or go south down, go down like on Route 20. It's like, oh my gosh. So
yeah. Or
what
head
was
south on 29,
yeah,
out towards North
exactly.
Gardens. Yeah,
So what was the adjustment like for you going from big city to small city and a lot of land around you?
Darnell, I'm still adjusting. I'm still using navigation very much to find my way around. I do know where the major roads are now, and how to get from point A to point B. And so in many cases, a lot of different ways how to get from point A to point B. But it's a challenge. I won't say it's necessarily a daily challenge, but it is a challenge.
When you got to Charlottesville, did you ever think, and we're going to talk a little bit about this in a couple of minutes, but when you got to Charlottesville, did you ever see any sign or any indication of the events that might follow in years to come? Just because, I mean, the city it's nice, it's a good place to live, great place to raise a family, but when it comes to the stuff that has happened in that city, I would never have guessed that would have ever happened just from looking at the city. And when I first moved there, granted that was 2017, late that year, but like it's like, how does this stuff happen here?
Yeah, it's you knew that racism existed. You just didn't realize the to what level or how prevalent that it actually was. 2017 was more than an eye opener, more than a wake up call. That alarm went off a long time ago. People have just been hitting the snooze button for a while, but it awakened a lot of people to what we're living in right now, and what many people have lived in for decades. Vinegar Hill, the raising of Vinegar Hill was real. That happened. The eugenics project over at UVA, that was real. That happened, and I don't think those are discussions that were had often enough, or to the real level and degree that they should have been had. A lot of the truths, and not just here in Charlottesville, but in the country in general, a lot of the truth of the history has been either downplayed or completely swept under the rug. And folks don't want to have those discussions. They still don't want to have those discussions. Look at the fights that are going on about critical race theory being taught. People just don't want to have those difficult discussions because it reveals too much about where we were, where they were, where they are. So it's I mean, this location, this community, this town was founded by Thomas Jefferson, and folks want to continuously highlight the great things that he did, and then, yeah, I'm sure he did a lot of great things for the country, but they don't want to talk about the other side, the fact that he was a racist, the fact that he was a rapist, the fact that he was a slaveholder. Those are discussions that forever had been taboo. We can't talk about those things, but they're there, they're real. And I think that 2017, as much as anything, brought about the real necessity to have those conversations.
Did you at any point, you personally, you talked about how there's a lot of alarms that go off, but we just hit snooze on it. Did you at any point throughout your life or your time in Charlottesville before those events of 2017, did you ever maybe hit snooze on the alarm of racism and the things that were going on in our society? Did you ever personally hit the snooze button on it?
I'm sure I did. Truth be told, I'm sure that I did, because we all reach a point of awakening at different points. And that's that in a large part is why I say you have to meet people where they are. Everyone doesn't get to your point of realization at the same time. So yeah, I'm sure that there were things that I may have said or did or overlooked that should have been addressed. But it's the old adage: when you know better, you do better. And it's just time for us to, first of all, to learn and educate, and then to do better, because we can.
We all know about what happened. Obviously, the summer of hate, as people may call it, 8/12, what happened in July of August that year. But for you as a man, how did the events leading up to that and everything change you as a person? How did it make you look at, or did it ever make you look at things a lot differently than you previously did?
I don't think you could help but be affected by it. As much as anything, it made me look at people differently. It made me realize where we are as a society. It was, is, and probably will continue to be a difficult point in time, that blip on the racist history of our country. And I mean, I still see documentaries to this day that affect and impact me in ways that I don't always expect them to. It just happens, because when you see that, when you actually live through that, it's so unique. I had one brother who was in Vietnam at the height of the fighting, and through conversations with him, it was very much like being in a war zone. All manner of things went on that day and that weekend that never should happen. It never should have happened in a modern day society, including the tragic murder of Heather Heyer. And it was just so unnecessary. That was a war over a piece of rock. And that's what it equates to. Folks were upset about the displacement or potential displacement of a piece of rock. And I can't see how someone can think that was worth someone's life. But it's what we deal with and what we live with every day here. And there's just especially for those who were here that day, for those who were present, um, and for the families of those affected. There's just no escaping it.
The build up to that day, I would say there's a number of events that you can go back to, especially going back a couple years prior. City Council announcing that they were considering and hopefully looking to remove the pieces of rock that once stood in that city, and that being the statues of Stonewall Jackson and also Robert E. Lee. And I'm pretty sure as an outsider looking in, I'm pretty sure there's stuff that I'm not probably privy of or probably aware of. Just what, from your perspective as someone that lived in that city, what was the buildup like to that moment? And could you, I'm pretty sure you shed light on it already, could you have ever forecasted what have happened?
No, I don't think anyone could. I'm not sure Nicodemus could have seen this coming. The impaneling of the Blue Ribbon Commission on Race Memorials and Public Spaces.
And you were on that committee, correct?
Yeah, I chaired that committee. The petition by Ziana Bryant, the bringing it up to council even a couple of years before the petition by councilperson Christian Zakos. All of these things were small steps. And I say small steps because of the implosion that actually happened that day. But all of these things were what led up to the Klan coming to Charlottesville for a rally. Various white nationalists, white supremacy leaders coming to Charlottesville. This is it's always been referred to as a quaint, quiet little place. And during 2016 and 2016, when the meetings and hearings were going on, 2017, of course, when the rallies and the Unite the Right rally actually happened, this became anything but quaint and quiet. The Band-Aid was ripped off. I often refer to it as the ninth gate of hell being open, and all of Satan's minions came pouring in. It was surreal. It was beyond tragic. It was just so unnecessary. The continued glorification of folks who fought to pursue the bondage of an entire people. That's what this was about. And I just don't see the real necessity and civilization doing that. We reached a point where we stopped talking about relocating these things, moving them somewhere more appropriate, getting them out of the immediate downtown area where so much business and commerce is being conducted, to the point that people just said, look, let's just melt them down and get rid of them, so that no other community ever has to deal with this again. And what's very telling is that the Unite the Right rally was that Saturday, the 12th. Communities started having discussions that Sunday. I know in Baltimore, the mayor there said, oh no, these things have got to go, talking about the Confederate statues there. Monday, they started disassembling those things and getting them out of town. And that happened in communities all across the country and really all across the world. Same thing was going on over in Germany. But as fate would have it, as the slow wheels of justice grind, we were probably one of the last communities to be afforded the opportunity to get ours out. We are at the point that they're gone. But now the disposition of them is what's being discussed. What should be done next? Where should they go? What should happen with them? And that's led to some very robust, if you will, discussions. And where that'll all end up, I mean, who knows? That's a decision for city council to make. But people are very keenly interested to know what will ultimately be decided.
What do you think should happen to them? Because I mean, well, there's still plenty of them, still up, plenty of Confederate statues. You've seen over the last year, the ones in Richmond, they've been torn down. And even going back to what you said, there was a domino effect after August 2017, where other cities started doing the same thing. I'm not sure where everyone where people put them. Johnny Reb in Albemarle County, which is only a matter of blocks away from the city statues where they stood, they gave it to some national battlefield out in Shenandoah, in the Shenandoah Valley. But where do you think they should go? I personally, for me, I feel like they should still be kept around, but maybe contextualized, like in a museum or somewhere, so people can understand. So that way, people can still understand. We don't get rid of our history; we can learn from it, but out of the public view. What do you think should happen to these statues that have been taken down around the country?
Well, and I thought I really went into this the commission with an open mind, because I needed to learn the history as well, and I had reached the point where I did not want them destroyed, but I thought that they needed to be in a more appropriate place, a museum or battlefield. You then ran into the problem of battlefields not even wanting them themselves. Just down the road, Appomattox, they refused them. They didn't want any parts of them. So now what do you do? Because these things are just enormous, and there are museums that aren't even large enough to house them. So, I mean, what do you do with these things? There was a lot of conversation about contextualization, and there were those who were pushing and advocating for that. And I just don't know what words you throw at 400 years of oppression and 400 years of demeaning of a people that would make it appropriate for those things to stick around. So if there's a proper place that is willing to accept them, and by proper place, I mean a museum or a Confederate battlefield that is willing to accept these things, then I'd say let them have them. Private owners I'd be somewhat leery of because of what they may actually do with them and where they may actually end up. But if a battlefield or museum does not come forth or has not come forth to say, hey, I'll take them, then I think that they should be destroyed, possibly melted down in something more civically and societally appropriate, be created out of them. And what that is, I have no idea. I have no idea. But even if they're destroyed, it doesn't destroy history. The history still exists. This once we're finished, this conversation between you and I will be history. God, I hope that no one erects a statue because of it. So you don't need a statue or a monument or a memorial for history to exist. And that was part of the argument that those who wanted to keep them around was making as well. And it's not true. It's just not.
So after 8/12 and everything, there was kind of a narrative that was built around the city just because of what happened. Let's keep in context. I mean, a lot of this damage that was done to the city was done from people that didn't live in Charlottesville or didn't even live in Virginia. It was a bunch of people from the outside. You need any evidence? It was the guy from Ohio was the one that unfortunately ran over Heather Heyer and a few other people. But going back to that, I felt like there was a narrative around Charlottesville that kind of drew a negative kind of connotation of what the city was. As someone that lives in Charlottesville, do you think that narrative fits? I don't think it does. What is the true Charlottesville that people need to hear about?
You know, there also was a narrative of both sides, if you will, and that narrative didn't fit. Here's the thing. What happened that day was tragic. And many of the people who came and involved themselves that day were from the outside. Many of them were right here. Many of them are still right here. And by right here, I don't mean the state of Virginia. I mean right here in our community. They live, work, and walk amongst us every day. And where they are on what happened that day, I don't know. I don't know. Hopefully that they saw it as a tragedy as well, the way that events unfolded. But Charlottesville has seemingly always played itself up as this family community, tight knit. Everybody has the kumbaya, get along moment here, and it's that just is not the case. This community is very much divided, racially, economically, socially. The issues exist in housing. They exist in food equity. They exist in healthcare. Now, there's been an immense amount of work since 17 to address these things and to bring about some changes. But still, there's plenty more that needs to be done. And I just hope that we don't lose focus or get too distracted along the way, because the work is still out there. And we just need serious-minded people doing that work and focused and dedicated to it.
And then you talked about how, like, that racism, I mean, it still divides us in America, it divides our communities, it divides us even where you live, and divides you in Charlottesville. Definitely wanting to ask about, like, the state of the city right now, because over the past, for 2 years, there's been a lot of instability within the city when it comes to especially high-ranking positions. I mean, city council, from the council meetings, it seems like a lot of them are at odds. The police chief, the city manager situation. How is that, like, seeing all of that where you live? I mean, what goes through your mind when you see so much instability within those leaders within the government?
We are rapidly heading towards the appointment and hiring of our sixth city manager in about a 3.5 year period. If that's not a signal of instability, I don't know what is, because the city manager is the chief executive officer according to the way that Charlottesville is structured. You have directly elected city council, who then from themselves elect the mayor, and the mayor is very much a figurehead position. They represent the city. They conduct the city meetings, but the city manager is the chief executive and really chief financial officer of the city. Then in some weird warped way, that position is hired by city council. So there's a very high level of instability, both in city government and in the various departments downtown. We have lost a numerous amount of directors and leaders here. Since 2017, since the Night of Right, we have lost 2 Black police chiefs and 2 Black city managers. And that's in a 4-year period. So is there something that's going on and going wrong in Charlottesville? I think those numbers themselves will bear that out. We have never, as a city, had until I think it was 16, until the election of 16, we never had 2 Black city councilors seated at the same time. That's very telling for a town that claims its liberalism and its progression. With the things that have gone on here recently, Mayor Walker was the first elected Black woman who served as mayor. Has decided she's pulling her name out of the race this November. So we will very much now be, I'm sorry, the potential exists that we will be again back to a council with no Black representation. There is one Black young woman who's running this year, this November, Yaz Washington, but she's the only one. And the mayor has just gotten frustrated with the actions and inactions of the seated council, and it is worn on her both mentally and physically. And she just reached a point where she just didn't feel like she could do it anymore, and it's understandable. This city tends to chew up and spit out its Black leadership. We want to claim inclusivity. We want to claim progression. We want to claim liberalism. But so often we don't put those things into practice, and it's troubling. But that's what's actual.
Is there any way? Where do you see Charlottesville, the city, going within the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
I have to remain hopeful. I have to remain optimistic. But it's right now it looks bleak. Housing, especially the issue of affordable housing, is going the wrong way. Neighborhoods are losing their identity. Developers are constantly popping places up into communities, into older Black communities that, again, the homes are passed down through generations. And it's what I refer to as backdoor gentrification. These developments go up in or near, which drives up the property value, which in turn drives up the property taxes, and families can no longer afford to live there, and they have to move out, and then other developers or rich white folks swoop in, claim that property, and the neighborhood is eventually lost. Vinegar Hill sit there even after the government claimed eminent domain and raised those properties and that entire Black community. And then it sat dormant for 40 or 50 years. If the government needed it that badly, you would think that they would have immediately began the process of construction and refiguring that space, but it didn't. And there are many who feel like it's a movement to try to force Blacks and other minorities out of the city. I hope that isn't the case, but I don't have a valid argument to offer them to support it. It just looks more and more like this city of some 50,000 that is some, I don't know, slightly short of 20% Black is really losing its minority representation.
At its core, with the city of Charlottesville itself in that area, and I feel like, I will be honest when I say this, I felt like with at least with me when I left the city, I felt like I won't say race had anything to do with it, but I felt like it was something that was a factor a little bit. But I'll just leave it at that. But do you feel like just the city as a whole, those in leadership, and whether that could be in the city of Charlottesville and other businesses in the city, do you think that race is something that needs to be discussed more within business and within the city structure?
Absolutely, but it's still a very uncomfortable conversation to have. And people don't like to put themselves in uncomfortable positions. So it's easier to gloss over, to ignore, to let someone else handle it. But those are some very high-level discussions that need to be had, not only here in Charlottesville, but across this state and across this country. Yeah, we've made progress. We certainly have made some giant strides and some immense leaps, but there's still so much more that has to be done. Not just needs to be done; it actually has to be done. If we're going to be the people that we say that we are, the country that we say that we are, the communities that we say that we are, this work has to be done.
And a couple more questions. One thing, just from my observation, my time in Seville, 3 years. Do you feel like Charlottesville is kind of like a microcosm of America? Like we build it up, we say it's a very nice place to be and stuff like that. It looks that way cosmetically, but there's a lot of flaws on the inside that need to be exposed.
Charlottesville reveals all the everything that's good with this country. It also reveals everything that's bad with this country. Um, so yeah, is it a microcosm? Absolutely. Um, the events of 2017 just pulled the Band-Aid back off of a scab that has been here for quite some time, and it exposed so much. Um, but it's not just here. I mean, you look at other communities. Look at New Orleans. Look at Portland. Look at Kenosha, Seattle. There's been a lot of talk here now on the 100-year anniversary of the Tulsa riot and the elimination of Black Wall Street. The bombing of the MOVE headquarters in Philadelphia. I mean, these are things that happened. And there's no escaping it. But again, people have not been willing to have these conversations and to talk about these things because it's painful. But if we can talk about the greatness of an individual on a statue, then we certainly ought to be able to talk about the pain that they've caused, or the pain that this country has put many of its citizens through. And until we face that head on and grapple with those decisions and those things that have been done, we'll continue to find ourselves at these points along various points along the way. We can't get away from it. We can't ignore it. It's there.
And my very last question, we've talked almost an hour here, and I'm definitely grateful for the
Oh,
time that
wow.
I've had to talk with you this morning, now afternoon. My very last question is, and you have to help me with the answer here. Name someone that you think would be a good guest for this podcast, but you got to help with the answer.
Wes Bellamy. He's very insightful, very much in tune with the things that have gone on here in Charlottesville, even though he's I won't say he's detached. He's teaching down in your hometown now, down at Virginia State. Mm-hmm. But he is a very bright. I'm sorry, and I failed to address him appropriately. Dr. Wes Bellamy. He put in a lot of work to get to that point, and I want to make sure that I give him his kudos and his props because he certainly earned it. But extremely intelligent young man who I think would bring a different perspective and a different insight to your podcast. Another individual would be Reverend Dr. Alvin Edwards, who I work with on the Clergy Collective. Who, if he has the time, again, would bring you a unique perspective, having served as mayor here in Charlottesville. I think either or both of those individuals would really give your audience a different insight.
Well, you definitely hammer that point home right there. So, Mr. Gathers, once again, I want to say thank you for your time. You, like I said, you're someone that I often love getting a chance to talk to whenever I got the chance to, and I'm even happier now, even 9 months removed from Charlottesville, that we're able to have this conversation here today. So I'm definitely grateful for the time, and we'll definitely be reaching out to Dr. Wes Bellamy and Alvin Edwards within the near future. So I definitely wanted to say thank you for the time, Mr. Gathers. Anything else that we left out here as we conclude.
I'm just very proud of you, and I've always respected the work that you've done and the grind that you put in. So I wish you nothing but success. I pray for that success for you, and hopefully we'll stay in touch.